A young woman is cursed to obey any command from anyone, leading her to unfortunate circumstances that could threaten their kingdom. In the wondrous land of Frel lives Sir Peter, his wife, Lady Eleanor, and their newborn daughter, Ella. While helping the mother, their household fairy, Mandy, uses magic to fetch the burp cloth, only to have it fly to her face. Suddenly, they hear the arrival of another fairy who's known for giving the worst gifts. To avoid this, Mandy hides the child in the closet before Lucinda arrives. They pretend that the baby is away, but the closet door swings open, revealing Ella. Lucinda quickly takes the baby, but gets annoyed when she keeps crying. Because of this, Lucinda gives Ella the gift of obedience, thus making the baby stop crying when she says so. Mandy demands the other fairy to take it back, but Lucinda declares that she doesn't take back her gifts. She threatens to turn the child into a squirrel instead, so the women are forced to accept the gift. Despite the inconvenient gift, Ella grows up to be a kind girl. However, Eleanor struggles to raise her child normally when Ella is compelled to do anything she says, even when it's a joke. This forces Eleanor and Mandy to tell the girl about her gift. Ella begs Mandy to break the spell, but only the fairy who gave her the gift can reverse it. Soon, Eleanor falls ill. On her deathbed, she reminds her daughter that only she and Mandy know about her gift, so Ella must never tell anyone, so they can't use it against her. She advises her to focus on who she really is, since her heart is stronger than any spell. Years later, Ella discovers that her father remarried as they were financially struggling. His new wife, Dame Olga, and her daughters Olive and Hattie soon arrive, though they're underwhelmed by their new home. As Ella gets to know her stepsisters, she discovers that Hattie is the president of Prince Char's fan club. She reminds her that the royal family segregated their kingdom, but Hattie doesn't care because the prince is handsome. The woman then complains about their closet space, demanding Ella take them to her room. Upon seeing that she has more room than them, they declare that they'll be taking it. When Ella protests, Hattie tells her to back off, and she's forced to do so. Hattie then notices Ella's locket, and despite the woman clarifying that it's her mother's, she commands her to hand it over. Tearfully, Ella complies. Eventually, Peter goes on his business trip, leaving Ella to her stepfamily. One day at school, Ella competes in a debate with Hattie. She points out how after King Florian was killed, supposedly by an ogre, his brother, Sir Edgar, began exiling non-human creatures and taking their lands. Hattie defends that driving out the ogres was a good thing. She adds that since Edgar put giants and elves to work, their kingdom has thrived with the free enterprise system. This angers Ella, who refuses to allow the creatures to be enslaved. Thus, she concludes that Edgar and his nephew are horrible. The fangirl scoffs at this and commands Ella to command her to say that she's stupid. Immediately, Ella obeys, making her classmates laugh. Realizing something, Hattie then tells the woman to hold her tongue, which she also does. This piques Hattie's curiosity. Elsewhere, King Edgar and Prince Char head to a mall opening in Frel. The prince thinks his uncle should go alone, given that he's the current king. However, Edgar begrudgingly points out that Char's coronation is next week, so he'll inherit the throne. Edgar's pet snake, Heston, agrees that the prince needs to connect with the public to build their trust. Char wonders why the people shouldn't trust them, so his uncle explains that while the young man was at school, their kingdom had been under siege because of the ogres and giants. Soon, the king and prince arrive at the mall while Char's fans scream in adoration. However, Ella and her best friend Arida use this chance to protest against driving out the ogres and giants. Pissed, Hattie rushes to her stepsister and orders her to go home. With no choice, Ella apologizes to her friend and rushes home. Suddenly, the fangirls start chasing after the prince. Char runs for dear life and ends up bumping into Ella, whom he pulls to hide. The woman gets pissed at the prince, accusing him of stealing people's lands. Surprised, he defends that he has never done that because he only wants peace, so she questions what he plans to do after his coronation. Char stammers as he realizes that he doesn't have any, convincing Ella that the prince cares more about his fan club than the kingdom. Finally, Ella realizes that she dropped her purse during the commotion. Wanting to prove himself, Char commands her to stay while he fetches it for her, forcing the woman to plant her feet on the ground. A carriage rushes in her direction, but luckily, the prince pushes her out of the way in time. Just then, Hattie and Olive find them, so the former quietly orders Ella and her sister to return to the mall, thus giving her some private time with the prince. Hattie then declares her devotion to Char, though this includes a bit of stalking. Afraid, the prince runs off. Later at the mall, Hattie spots Ella with Arida, so she forces her to shoplift. This results in Ella getting chased around by the guards. Just as she's leaping over a barrel, a guard orders her to freeze, and to everyone's surprise, she does so in mid-air. When the woman finally drops into the barrel, the guards arrest her. Later, Olga laments over having a thief for a stepdaughter. Mandy immediately suspects that the stepsisters put her up to it, but Hattie notices Arida arriving, so she orders Ella to blame her best friend. Once Arida knocks at their door, the stepmother commands Ella to tell her that she doesn't want to see her again. Tearfully, Ella does as she's told again. Because of this, Ella becomes determined to make Lucinda reverse the curse. To help her, Mandy introduces her to her boyfriend, Benny, whom she accidentally turned into a magical book. Through Benny, they discover that Lucinda is shopping for a wedding gift at Giantville, thus giving Ella a destination. Suddenly, Olga commands her stepdaughter to gather flowers for their portrait painting tomorrow, so Ella obliges, though she specifically picks poison ivy for them. Because of this, the women erupt in rashes the next morning. While they're busy, Ella and Benny head on to their adventure, which is quickly interrupted when they find an elf, Slanin, being bullied by some men. When Slanin encourages Ella to defeat the men, her gift provides her with excellent fighting skills to do so. After he's released, the elf offers to accompany the lady, fearing that he'll get in trouble again. That night, he takes her to his hometown, where they're welcomed by dancing elves, who are forced to perform every time there's a visitor. They retreat to a pub, where Ella comments on how her companion oddly hates music. Slanin sarcastically points out how everyone thinks elves should always be singing and dancing. Instead, he wants to be a lawyer, but the elfin restrictions that Edgar passed prevent elves from taking jobs outside the entertainment business. Meanwhile, an invitation for Ella to the princess ball arrives at her house. Olga intercepts this letter as she plots to find husbands for her daughters. Elsewhere, Ella and Slanin find royal guards collecting elves for the coronation. Seeing this, Ella encourages her companion to file a petition to allow him into law school. Since the kingdom is on their way, she invites him to join them. With that, the trio ventures out the next day, only encountering an ogre named Nish. As he and his friends corner them, Nish commands the woman not to move, allowing their group to be captured. Luckily, Char and his men arrive to their rescue. The prince interrogates the ogres about his father's death, but Nish clarifies that his kind loved King Florian since he allowed them to live in peace. Conflicted about what to believe, the prince releases the ogres. Upon learning that she's heading to Giantville, Char offers to accompany Ella. She refuses, but when Slanin tells her to, Ella accepts the offer. Unbeknownst to them, Heston has snuck into the prince's bag, eavesdropping on them. During their journey, Slanin mentions his intentions to become a lawyer, but the prince isn't confident to make a decision, so he advises them to raise it with his uncle. Disappointed, Ella points out that Char is about to become king, so he has to make such decisions. The prince defends that he didn't ask to be a king, and Ella argues that his uncle has also left others with no choice in their lives. As if to prove her point, they pass by a farm where giants are whipped into hard labor. Seeing this, the prince finally realizes the extent of his kingdom's cruelty. By night, they arrive at the wedding in Giantville. A giant named Kupuduk recognizes the prince, who's afraid that they hate the royal family for enslaving them. Still, the giant welcomes their group. Unfortunately, Ella discovers that Lucinda has already left the party. Meanwhile, Char learns how badly the giants have been treated, so he promises Kupuduk to fix things after his coronation. Afterward, Ella approaches the prince, noting that they must leave to find her fairy godmother. Char points out that it's late, so he advises her to stay for the party, which she obliges. Seeing her agree so quickly, the prince clarifies that she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. Hearing this uplifts Ella, so she thanks Char and wholeheartedly agrees to stay. Later that night, Char offers to give Ella access to the Hall of Records to find Lucinda's address. This makes the woman hopeful. Suddenly, Slanin finds them as he's running away from the giants, who are asking him to sing. Ella tries to defend her friend, so the giants ask her to sing instead. With no choice, Ella hesitantly sings Somebody to Love, which everyone enjoys. The song ends with Ella in the prince's arms, sparking a connection between them. Later, the two share stories about their families. The prince is confident that he can convince Edgar to fix things, but Ella encourages Char to correct things in his own way. Inspired, Char asks Ella to kiss him, though he clarifies that it wasn't an order. The lady smiles, saying that she knows before going in for a kiss. The next day, the group arrives at the kingdom. Coincidentally, the prince's fan club is on the castle tour when Char appears with Ella, angering Hattie. The fans quickly rush to their beloved prince, who pulls his companion away to safety. Edgar finds the two, and when he uses metaphors in their conversation, he notices how Ella takes it literally. This piques the man's curiosity over the strange woman. Soon, Ella is left at the Hall of Records with Benny while Char prepares for the ball. He shares with his uncle how Ella has opened his eyes about what's happening to their land. He also confesses that he wishes to marry Ella, which troubles his uncle. Later, Edgar summons Hattie and Olive to uncover the truth about Ella. When he offers to arrange for Hattie to marry Char, she immediately reveals that Ella does whatever she's told. At the Hall of Records, Ella discovers that Lucinda lives at a nearby fairy retirement home. However, Edgar arrives and tests the woman's obedience, which he quickly proves. With this, Edgar orders her to kill the soon-to-be king at midnight. Ella fights to refuse, but she has no choice but to take Edgar's dagger. She questions why he'd have his nephew killed, so the vile man reveals that he wants to stay in power, hence why he killed his brother, King Florian. He then orders her to leave, asserting that she can't tell anyone of his orders. Desperate to lift her curse, Ella heads to the retirement home but discovers that Lucinda was kicked out. With no choice, she tearfully writes a farewell letter to Char, breaking the man's heart. Afterward, she has Slanen chain her up outside the kingdom, though she doesn't explain why. Ella also takes him to gather the elves and giants to keep Edgar away from Char and find Benny, whom she hid in the Hall of Records. Soon, the ball begins, but the heartbroken prince remains sullen. He then finds the stepsisters and asks Hattie for a dance, much to her delight. Outside, Ella is surprised when her fairy godmother literally drops in after a failed teleportation spell. The lady immediately begs her to reverse the gift, explaining that it'll lead her to hurt the man she loves. Upon blurting this out, the woman finally realizes that she's in love with the prince. Still, the stubborn fairy asserts that her gifts are good and it's not her fault that Ella is stuck in her mess. Mistaking the woman's restraints as a trap, Lucinda frees her as an act of goodwill. This makes Ella's body force her to head to the castle. So Lucinda changes her outfit in a beautiful dress, thinking that she just wants to go to the ball. The fairy then leaves the woman struggling to keep herself away from the castle. At the ball, Char asks Hattie about Ella, much to her annoyance. She insists on wooing the prince, but Ella arrives, thus diverting his attention. With the spell pushing her body, Ella lands on Char's arms while the king watches in delight. Desperate, the lady asks the prince to command her never to see him again, but he refuses to do so unless she doesn't love him. He asks her to confess her feelings, prompting Ella to declare that she loves him. The love-struck prince then takes her to the Hall of Mirrors, recounting that it was where his father encouraged him to picture himself as a great leader. Char admits that he never saw himself that way until he met Ella. Finally, Char proposes to the woman, but midnight arrives, prompting Ella to unsheath the dagger behind her. Seeing her conflicted, the prince thinks she's merely worried about their status, so he embraces her to comfort her, unaware that Ella's hand is hovering the blade at his back. At that moment, Ella recalls the horrible thing she was forced to do. She also remembers her mother telling her that her heart is stronger than any spell. Upon seeing her reflection in a mirror, Ella commands herself not to be obedient. Finally, Char looks up and sees the dagger in her hands before the woman wills herself to release it. Free from her curse, Ella smiles. Her smile falls, however, when Char accuses her of trying to kill him. Edgar arrives and summons the guards to arrest the woman while her prince remains frozen in shock. While Ella is thrown into the dungeon, Edgar and Heston lie to Char about an uprising, hinting that the woman was a part of it. His uncle implies that Ella has been tricking him to assassinate him, much to the prince's disbelief. With that, Edgar tells his nephew to let him handle things before his coronation tomorrow. In the morning, Slanen has gathered the elves and the giants for Ella. They discover Benny in the castle's garbage bin, who warns them that Ella is in trouble. Suddenly, Nish and his friends appear, volunteering to help as they want vengeance against Edgar. With that, the elves, ogres, and giants cram themselves into a carriage to infiltrate the castle. After knocking out the dungeon guard, the group frees Ella, who immediately uses the magic book to see that Edgar has switched the crown with a poisoned one to kill Char. Soon, the coronation begins, but before the crown is placed on the prince's head, Ella and her group storms in. The guards immediately attack, leading to an all-out battle. Seeing her in danger, Char is compelled to save the woman he loves, despite still thinking that she plotted his murder. During this, Mandy sees Benny and Slanen in trouble. She casts a spell on her boyfriend, turning him into a pumpkin before reverting him into a human, thus allowing him to save the elf. Meanwhile, Ella explains her curse to Char and how Edgar used it to make her kill him. When that failed, Edgar poisoned his crown, shocking the prince. She also reveals that his uncle killed his father. Hearing this, Edgar denies her claims, only for Heston to attempt to bite the prince at the same time. Ella kicks the snake away, and the prince's fangirls go after Heston for revenge. With his cover blown, Edgar declares that King Florian wasn't fit to rule the kingdom, asserting that he should be king. He then steals Char's crown and wears it, forgetting that he poisoned it. With the fight over, Char attempts to kiss his beloved, but Hattie rushes in and orders her stepsister never to kiss the prince again. However, Ella's curse has been broken, so she steals back her mother's locket instead. Soon, King Char marries Ella, thus reuniting their kingdom and mending relationships that were broken by silly spells. The newlyweds then ride off to live happily ever after.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.